I want to talk about solo backpacking today. I get a lot of people reaching out to me saying, hey, do you have tips for making myself feel more comfortable or helping my spouse feel more comfortable with me going out by myself into the woods? So I've got a few different tips that I want to talk about that will hopefully help you feel more comfortable and more prepared to go on a solo backpacking trip. So the first thing that I want to talk about has to do with staying close to home. This makes a huge difference in feeling just more confident in being out when you go on a solo trip. If you're close to home, then it really gives you the opportunity to make the decision, if necessary, to bail and not feel like, man, it's going to take me forever to get home. I've done that. And this trail's close to home. It's easy for me to get up here, and going on a quick overnight trip like this gets me out into the woods, but it allows me to feel like safe in a way and confident that if something is not working out, it's not a big deal for me to walk the half mile back to the car, and for me in this case, the 20 minutes to get back to my house. The second thing that I want to talk about has to do with keeping yourself busy while you are out on a solo trip. If you're just going out and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go set up my tent, I'm gonna go camping, cool. Then you're likely gonna find yourself getting bored or just not really enjoying yourself as much as you could because you haven't done things or brought things to keep yourself busy. So it's important to maybe not go out as early on the trip so that when you get to camp and you get all set up, you're then maybe cooking dinner, and by the time you get done with dinner, you're then in the tent and ready for an evening in your tent to then go to sleep. So other things that you can do to keep yourself busy is bring some of the comforts that you would normally have at home with you. And in a lot of cases, with the way that technology is with phones and such, you can download like TV shows or movies ahead of time, or books or audiobooks, and use those to fill your time a little bit. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. I enjoy laying in my tent, watching a movie before bed. Doesn't mean I'm doing anything wrong by being out in my tent and doing that. And it brings a lot of comfort, and it can remove those fears of like, it's really quiet outside and it's really dark. That can be scary, to be quite honest. And so bring those comforts from home, keep yourself busy. All of that will help you enjoy yourself more while you are by yourself. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is sharing your trip information and plans with loved ones, whether that's a spouse or a good friend. Just letting people know exactly where you're going to be, what you're going to be doing, and your anticipated time being home. Now, something that I like to use for my wife specifically is I will give a time of, this is when I expect to be home, and then I provide a freak out time, meaning that if I'm not home at 10 a.m., for example, that doesn't mean freak out. Like, I'm going to provide a buffer zone of time because maybe I rolled my ankle or something just slowed me down that is making it so I'm going to be an hour or two later than I expected to be, and I don't have cell service that will allow me to provide that information to my wife. And so I'll then give a period of time, whatever I think is reasonable for the trip, to say, okay, if you do not hear from me at this time, that's freak out time. Like, call search and rescue or whatever the plan is for that, so that I'm able to get rescued or taken care of if absolutely necessary. And if you have a satellite device, like I carry a Zoleo satellite communicator, I can use that to pinpoint my exact location, share that with my wife, and all of that allows for just better communication overall of exactly what is happening. And honestly, having a communicator like the Zoleo truly does help you feel more comfortable because it's bringing some of that like communication aspect that you expect to have at home of being able to text to being out in the backcountry. I actually really enjoy winding down at the end of the day and spending 5 or 10 minutes of quick, simple conversation with my wife to just check in and let her know how things are going, but also ask her how things are going at home. And that always puts my mind at ease, makes me feel better going to bed, knowing that things are going to be just fine. So the next real quick thing that I want to talk about is know your gear when you're going out. I know that seems kind of silly to mention and talk about, but it's true, especially like in this setting that I'm in here, for example. I brought a semi-freestanding tent that really was not the best choice for setting up on really like sandy, loose, dry snow. And so it provided a harder time basically in getting my tent set up. Is the gear that I'm planning to take going to work out exactly what I need for that trip and the conditions that I'm going to experience? Because if you're trying out brand new pieces of gear on a first time or second time solo trip, that could add some complexity to your trip that you may not actually be looking forward to, and could create some unnecessary complexities and stress and such that could not make it so you enjoy your trip as much. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is really important in my opinion, and it has to do with knowing your weaknesses of your particular skill set. If you have not spent a lot of time in the backcountry, then your level of education, not to be rude or inconsiderate in any way, but you just don't have as much experience, and that can actually play into the kind of decision making that goes into a trip. If you find yourself in a scenario that you have to make some informed decisions without having as much experience, you may find yourself not making great decisions while you're out there. So understand when you're planning a trip and going out on a solo trip to go easy, start basic, and stick with familiar places, because going out and just having time in the backcountry is way more important than trying to do some epic, big, crazy thing. You can work towards that and make that a goal as experience becomes something more a part of your outdoor resume. Understand that, like, if you are not as familiar with navigation or first aid or just the general things that go into decision making and understanding what kind of things can happen on a trip, then spend more time in familiar places and just slowly and gradually allow yourself opportunities to push yourself a little bit more so that you can increase those skill sets to become more educated essentially in your experience in the backcountry. And that will help you feel more comfortable going out on more intense solo trips, going longer distances, more difficulty, anything that is around that kind of idea. So curious if you guys have any tips, to leave them down in the comment section, or things that have helped you enjoy solo backpacking even more. And appreciate you guys watching. If you're not subscribed, you know what to do. Hope you have an awesome day. See you later.